Uncover the incredible voice, how a maid's touching song changed a cowboy's life forever. In a quiet corner of a small Texas town, beneath the flickering neon sign of a diner, Sarah wiped down tables with a fierce determination. The smell of burnt coffee lingered in the air, but today wasn't just any day. It was a moment destined to shift the course of her life. At the tender age of 25, she was a maid, a caregiver, and a dreamer, all rolled into one. Without fail, she worked late into the night, tirelessly serving greasy plates of food and warm coffee to truck drivers and locals, all for the sake of her ailing grandmother, who had raised her with wisdom and warmth. The diner, with its constant buzz, felt like a cage at times, muffling the powerful voice Sarah harbored deep inside her soul. As the night wore on and customers trickled in, her thoughts strayed to the community event happening later at the community center. Tonight, she would take the stage, her heart racing with hope. She would sing her voice, a lifeline woven with passion, breaking through the noise of the diner. This was her chance to share her dreams with a world beyond plates and coffee mugs. Just a few blocks away, Jake, a rugged cowboy in his dirty jeans and scuffed boots, was wrapped in a different struggle. At just over 30, the weight of his father's death still hung heavily on his shoulders. The family ranch teetered on the edge of foreclosure, and with every passing day, the debts swirled around him like restless cattle, refusing to settle. His friends, they never let him forget how a rancher could end up lost like this. They spoke in hushed tones about giving up. Jake clenched his jaw. He wouldn't let them see his vulnerability, not even as the storm raged inside him. As twilight descended, the community center buzzed with life. Folks gathered, eager for a night of southern charm. When it was Sarah's turn to grace the stage, she shuffled nervously, her heart pounding. With every trembling breath she took, a part of her shed the heavy weight of doubt. Then, she began to sing a powerful melody about resilience and hope that curled its way through the hearts of those gathered. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Every note soared into the air, wrapping around the crowd like a warm embrace. Even Jake, who watched from the back, felt the edges of his hardened heart begin to thaw. For the first time in a long time, he felt warmth, remnants of hope creeping back in. It was as if Sarah's voice pulled him from the abyss of his grief. The audience swayed, captivated, eyes glistening with unshed tears. In the days that followed, something beautiful bloomed between Jake and Sarah. Their laughter began to weave into one another's lives, challenging the pain that clouded judgment and sparked the flame of transformation. Yet as their bond grew stronger, the storm clouds of societal prejudices loomed. Friends of Jake mocked and jeered, tipping the balance of his soul. How could he, a rancher, find peace with a maid from a diner? But as fate would have it, a tempest loomed on the horizon, a violent storm that would put their resilience to the test. How far would they go to defend each other, fight together, and unite a small town in crisis? The questions lingered, forming the backdrop for a battle that might just change everything. The storm hit like a wild stallion, fierce and untamed, tearing through the small Texas town like a curse. Wind howled, rain lashed against windows, and the once cheerful chatter at the diner was replaced by anxious glances. Sarah stood behind the counter, wiping down the surface of the coffee machine, but her mind couldn't focus. The thought of Jake darted in and out of her consciousness. Was he safe? The ranch was a few miles away, vulnerable in this chaos. Sarah, you sure you want to stay? The diner's owner, Miss Clara, asked, her voice laced with concern. This storm doesn't look like it's letting up. I can't leave yet, Sarah replied, the fierceness in her voice surprising even herself. I need to make sure everyone's okay. With a nod, Miss Clara turned her attention to securing the windows. The tension in the air felt unbearable. Outside, streets transformed into rivers, and Sarah struggled with the weight of fear lodged deep in her gut. She glanced at her phone, the screen dry and unforgiving, no messages from Jake. Meanwhile, just a stone's throw from the diner, Jake worked feverishly to protect what was left of his family legacy. He and a few loyal hands sprinted to gather livestock, determined to secure them before the rising waters could sweep them away. His heart raced, not just from the physical labor, but from worry over Sarah. He knew she would never back down from a challenge, but he wished she could escape the storm's grip. "Jake! Over here!" A voice called out. It was Tom, a longtime friend, soaked from head to toe. "We need to get to the barn, hurry." They braved the wind and rain, pushing against nature's wrath. But as they crossed the yard, a piercing shiver shot through Jake. He could sense something amiss, like the howl of the wind was carrying a message just for him. "Tom, we have to go check on Sarah," Jake shouted, straining to be heard over the deluge. "What? Are you crazy?" Tom yelled back. "She's fine at the diner." "Fine. If this storm keeps up, who knows what'll happen to her?" Jake countered, his fear swelling to match the storm's fury. Without waiting for a response, he took off, sprinting back toward town, each step heavy with dread. The diner stood alone in the darkness, lights flickering like a candle fighting against the wind. Sarah ducked into the back room, her heart pounding in rhythm with the storm. She couldn't shake the feeling that something monumental was drawing near. The waitress she had been, the songbird she dreamed about being, were they enough to keep everything intact? Just then, the door swung open violently, wind shrieking behind it. Jake stood there, drenched and wild-eyed, a silhouette carved by the storm's fury. The world outside faded to a dull roar as their gazes locked, the unspoken tension forming a bridge that only their souls could see. "Sarah!" he shouted, rushing in, slamming the door shut against the tempest. "Are you okay?" A rush of relief swept over her, and tears threatened to spill. "I was so worried about you." They embraced tightly, the world outside a daunting battleground. In that moment, the storm wasn't just nature's fury, it was a test, a defining moment of what lay ahead. But even as they stood there, a deep understanding began to weave between them. If they could survive this tempest, what other storms could they weather together? As the winds howled, something deeper stirred within them, a burgeoning resolve to rise against societal barriers, to challenge the judgments of the world. They were not just fighting for survival, they were fighting for a future, and just as a moment of calm fell amidst the chaos, a distant rumble echoed in the darkness, signaling that this storm was just the beginning of something much larger than they ever anticipated. What lay ahead would challenge everything they believed in. The diner felt like a lifeboat amidst the chaos, walls thrumming with a pulse born from the storm outside. Jake and Sarah stood, bodies entwined, the warmth of their embrace almost a stark contrast to the freezing fear gripping the world beyond the door. "I thought I lost you," Jake whispered, his voice low and threaded with urgency. The truth laid bare within him. This at once felt like a reunion and a reckoning. The words he had kept buried for so long surged forth like the floodwaters, threatening to drown out everything else. "I'm right here," she replied, locking her eyes onto his. Their connection was electric, and in that moment, it seemed nothing else mattered. Outside the wind wailed like a siren. She clung to him, a reminder of the warmth in the chaos. With a suddenness that made them both jump, the lights flickered and then went out, plunging them into shadows. A cold fear crept over Sarah, the shadows now holding dark possibilities. "We need to check the generator." "It might not last long," Jake urged, breaking their moment. "Stay close to me." Together, they edged toward the back room where the generator was located, guided only by the faint flash of lightning illuminating the windows. The storm was relentless, its roars echoing in the night, but Sarah's heart raced not just from fear. "Do you think it's really safe here?" she asked, her voice steady, but inside, she felt like a tightly wound spring. "We'll be fine," Jake assured her, but the uncertainty flickered in his eyes. Before they reached the door, the sound of shattering glass broke their bubble, dangling them by a thread over an abyss of dread. They both turned, hearts stuttering in their chests. "Did you hear that?" Sarah asked, gripping his arm fiercely. "Yeah. It sounded like it came from the diner." Jake's voice was taut, and as he moved to the front, it was as if he was going straight into the eye of the storm. Even in turmoil, their roles had shifted, unsteady and raw. They stepped out cautiously, navigating through broken chairs and sloshing puddles formed by the onslaught of rain. The air was thick with the smell of wet earth and something else. Something sharp and alarming. Jake pushed the door aside as they entered the main area, slow and tense. Outside, the storm pounded. "Stay behind me," he said softly before moving forward, surveying the chaos. The sight made Sarah's heart drop. One of the windows had indeed burst open, shards of glass littering the floor. "Jake!" she gasped, feeling a wave of vulnerability wash over her. What if the storm wasn't the only threat lurking in the darkness? In that eerie quiet, time seemed to stretch. A flicker of movement caught Sarah's eye. A figure emerged from the shadows, soaked and shrouded in darkness. Fear shot through her veins. "Who's there?" Jake called out, voice steady yet strained. The figure stepped closer, illuminated momentarily by a bolt of lightning. "Help please," came a weak voice, strained yet familiar. Jake's eyes widened. "Is that you, Ben?" Sarah's heart sank deeper into her stomach. Ben was a neighbor, someone she always found amiable, but tonight, he looked pale and lost, a specter brought together by the storm's wrath. "Ben! What happened?" Jake yelled more forcefully now, rushing to his side. "Horse trailer overturned," he gasped, breathless with panic. "I couldn't get them out. They're trapped." With each word, Sarah felt a chaos deepening within. They were beginning to understand that the storm had claimed more than just earthly possessions. Before she could react, Jake turned to her, determination etched into his features. "We need to go help them." "Jake, it's dangerous out there," she urged, a torrent of emotions battling within her. Fear and resolve collided sharply in her heart, trying to decide whether to tether him to safety or to climb out into the storm with him. "I know," he replied with a fierce longing in his eyes. "But I can't abandon them. Not now." And before she could voice another objection, he took her hand, squeezing it tightly as if trying to share a fraction of his strength. "Okay," she whispered, her spirit rising alongside a sense of urgency. "We'll do it together." As the three of them moved towards the door again, the wind roared back to life, a primal force determined to thwart their mission. The darkness outside wasn't just a storm anymore. It was a challenge, a real test of what it meant to fight for those they loved. The night stretched before them, unfathomable, yet a flicker of hope sparked in her gut. But even in their determination, as they stepped out into the tempest, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that this storm was only the beginning of a much greater struggle. What awaited them in the throes of that darkness would change everything. The wind screamed through the diner door as they stepped outside, tossing rain like darts against their bodies. Jake shielded Sarah as much as he could, leaning into the wind to keep her protected. The storm had transformed the world into a wild and frantic beast, and with every gust, it held warnings that cut through her heart like icy knives. "Stay close," Jake shouted, his voice barely audible over the din. "Let us go," she replied, adrenaline kicking in. There was no turning back now. Their feet splashed through puddles, rain soaking their clothes, but they pressed on. A few steps away, Ben was muttering something, trying to steady his breath, his face pale with fear. "They're in the field. The horses are trapped under the trailer," he explained urgently, his eyes darting as if the wind itself was alive. "Lead the way," Jake urged. Ben nodded, his gaze shifting to the chaos outside. "It's just on the other side of the hill." As they navigated through the storm, Sarah's heart raced. Each bolt of lightning illuminated the darkness, revealing long shadows that danced with the wind. She could feel the weight of the world pressing close, every low rumble of thunder hinted at devastation. "Can you see it?" Ben called out, pointing ahead. "Not yet." Jake yelled back. Then, out of the corner of her eye, Sarah spotted something glimmer in the chaos. The outline of the overturned trailer emerged like an omen, its shape distorted but clear enough against the sky. "Over there!" Sarah yelled, and she couldn't help but feel a tinge of fear. They sprinted toward it, lunging through the mud, urgency propelling them. When they reached the scene, her stomach twisted. The trailer lay awkwardly on its side, hooves pawing the dirt and desperate whinnies echoing in the air. "Stay here," Jake commanded, rushing towards the horses. "Jake! Wait!" Sarah shouted, panic rising in her chest. But it was too late, he was already diving in, trying to calm the scared animals. She could see him struggling against the storm, his body fighting the debris around them. The sound of a horse crying made her heart pound louder. "I can't just stand here," she thought, her feet moving against her will. She joined him, huddling near a stallion that looked ready to bolt. "Shoo, it's okay," she whispered, reaching out a hand. The horse trembled under her touch, and for a moment, in the midst of the tempest, she could feel their shared fear. "Ben, come help us," Jake shouted, wrestling with another horse, trying to coax it away from the entrapment that in that moment, Sarah felt the enormity of everything they were trying to accomplish. The strength of the storm, the anxiety of the horses, the urgency of their mission, it all combined to create a cyclone of emotion. "I can't let fear win," she murmured, grounding herself as she slowly worked to comfort the stallion, her heart racing. Then, she heard a crack of thunder, loud enough to make her flinch. A second later, a tremendous crash echoed as part of the trailer shifted. "Jake!" she screamed, fear rushing through her like a tidal wave. "Hold on!" he shouted back, his voice steady despite the chaos. She watched as he battled against the edges of the trailer, reaching for a horse's lead rope, sweat mixing with rain on his forehead. And then, just like that, the trailer shifted again. The impact sent a jolt through her. The storm seemed to roar louder as all three of them held their breath, waiting for the next moment. "You ready?" Jake shouted over the gale, determination flickering in his eyes. "Ready," she echoed, steeling herself. In that moment, Sarah wondered if their lives would ever be the same after they faced this. They were standing on the edge of a storm, not just the one brewing in the skies, but one that was carving a path through their hearts. As the rain poured down, they worked together, and the bond between them grew tighter with each passing second. It wasn't just about getting those horses to safety, it was about courage, love, and facing the shadows that wanted to bury them. But just as they were about to secure the last of the horses, the wind shifted. A sound sliced through the storm, a voice calling out in desperation, "Someone help." Sarah's blood ran cold. Who was out there, and what new challenge was about to unfold? The wind howled in response, almost a sinister echo to the pleading voice. Sarah's heart raced, she felt small against the tempest, and for a moment, hesitation crept in. But then, memories of her family flooded her mind, the strength and resilience they'd shown in the face of hardship. She couldn't let fear define this moment. "Jake," she yelled, urgency spilling out with every word. "We have to find out who that is." Jake glanced back, concern etched across his face. "We can't leave the horses." "I know that, but what if someone is in danger?" She pressed, scanning the chaos. Each drop of rain felt like a reminder that time was slipping away. Ben, who had been doing his best to help guide the horses, nodded reluctantly. "Listen, if one of us goes, we can still keep an eye on the horses." "All right," Jake decided, determination flickering in his eyes once more. "Sarah, you're the fastest. Go check it out, I'll stay with the horses." As she turned to run, adrenaline coursed through her. She pushed through the sheets of rain, her focus laser-sharp. The voice was muffled now, swallowed by the storm, but she kept moving, calling out with each step. "Hello. Where are you? A flash of lightning lit the world around her, and she saw a figure stumbling not far from the edge of the field. It was as if the storm had conjured the person from sheer desperation. Help! Please, I'm stuck. The voice broke through the storm, and Sarah's heart twisted. She rushed toward it, the ground slippery beneath her feet. Hold on. I'm coming. She shouted, trying to make sense of what she was running into. As she got closer, she could finally see him, a young man, drenched and struggling to stay upright, clinging to a wooden fence post. What happened? She called, extending her hand to him. The fence fell during the storm. I was trying to rescue a calf, but I got caught. He fought back tears, his voice cracking under the strain of fear and uncertainty. Stay still. I'll pull you up. Sarah grabbed his arm, adrenaline pushing her beyond her limits. With a firm grip, she yanked him forward, and he stumbled into her. They were inches apart. She could feel his shivering through the soaked fabric. We need to get back to the barn, she urged, glancing back towards Jake and Ben, still trying to manage the chaos of the horses. Yes, they're in the barn. We have to hurry. His eyes darted nervously behind her, as if the storm were honing in on their vulnerability. This was it. She could see the glimmer of the barn lights far in the distance, a beacon amidst the rage outside. Then let us go, she said, firing up her determination before she got swept away by fear. Together, they navigated through the relentless downpour, each step heavy with the knowledge that lives depended on them. The storm was relentless, pounding against them, thrumming in her ears. Watch out! He shouted, pointing to a branch flying through the air. They ducked just in time, colliding with each other. Keep moving, she encouraged, gripping his hand tightly. They stumbled forward, almost losing their footing in the mud, but Sarah could see the barn now, closer than ever. The shouts of Jake and Ben filtered through, mixing with the desperate whinnies of the horses. As they neared the barn door, fear was eclipsed by hope. She pushed it open, the familiar smell of hay and livestock washing over them like a comforting blanket. Jake! Ben! I found him! Sarah yelled, relief flooding over her, but just then, thunder erupted above, the ground shook, and a bone-chilling crack filled the air. The barn roof, already stressed by the storm, began to splinter. Run! Ben yelled, but it was too late. A moment of terror descended, their eyes wide as everything shifted and darkness fell around them. And just like that, Sarah knew their fight was far from over. What would they have to sacrifice to survive? The loud crack echoed like a gunshot, and for a split second, everything froze. Sarah felt her pulse throbbing in her ears, drowning out the howling wind. Time slowed as her brain processed the impending danger. The roof above them cracked like ice, and she instinctively pulled the young man closer to her, shielding him from whatever was about to fall. Get down! Jake's urgent roar snapped her back to reality, and she dove to the ground, feeling the cold, wet hay beneath her. Panic surged through her as debris started to rain down, splintered wood and hay flying in every direction. There was chaos, muffled screams pierced through the noise, and as Sarah shielded the young man with her body, she felt Jake's arm grab her shoulder. We have to get out, he shouted, but she could barely hear him. No, she yelled back. What about Ben? Where's Ben? Before Jake could respond, another volley of wood crashed down just a few feet away. Ben! A swirling surge of fear clawed at her stomach. She couldn't just leave him. Jake's grip tightened on her arm. We have to trust he's okay. Come on. He pulled her toward the barn door, the opening now slashed with jagged edges and dark shadows from above. With a sudden rush of energy, Sarah fought against Jake's hold. I won't leave him. Just then, a movement caught her eye. Ben was crawling toward them, his face smeared with dirt and blood. He clearly was struggling but still managed to keep his feet beneath him. Get out! He spat out, desperation pooling in his voice. I can't hold it much longer. The barn felt alive, creaking and groaning under the weight of the storm and their fear. Sarah sprinted to Ben, who was braced against a wooden beam, his look a mix of pain and determination. "We need to go." She shoved herself under his arm, helping to support him. Together, they moved clumsily but with purpose. The roar of the storm felt like it was swallowing the world, and every step felt like they were dragging mountains. Jake was ahead of them, his voice a beacon in the chaos. "This way. Hurry." He waved them toward a side door that wouldn't hold long against the storm's wrath. As they stumbled toward safety, Sarah risked a glance back at the devastation. The roof buckled, wooden frames finally giving way. Her heart sank as she realized just how close they had come to being trapped. "We made it. We're almost there." But as they reached the door, another gut-wrenching rumble echoed through the barn. The ground trembled, and Sarah turned to see the beam towering above them splintering. "Run!" she screamed, her voice barely above the rage of the storm. They burst through the door, tumbling into the rain-soaked night. The cold air hit them like a wall, but it felt like freedom. Gasping for breath, they stopped momentarily to catch their footing, trembling from fear and adrenaline. "We did it." Sarah exhaled, relief flooding her chest. But then, her heart dropped. Where was the young man? She spun around. He was still inside, frozen by the chaos. "Help him," Jake urged, fear mingling with urgency in his eyes. "But how?" The barn groaned ominously behind them, and another crash shook the ground. Sarah felt her stomach twist as the reality of the storm hit her hard. "Wait. I can go back," she yelled, but Jake grabbed her, his grip unyielding. "You can't. We need to make it to the house." The young man was still inside. A flicker of desperation ignited in her heart. "No. We can't leave him. Sarah, listen to me. We can't risk it." With the storm pounding down, Sarah's voice was hot with determination. "I won't let someone else suffer because I was afraid." Jake hesitated, seeing the fire in her eyes. "Then let us make this fast," he finally said, and that s when she surged forward, fueled by hope and the horror of choices they could never undo. Together, they dashed back into the barn's darkness, and Sarah's heart hammered against her chest as the wind screamed behind them. What would happen if they failed? What lengths would she have to go to save him? The air inside the barn was thick with dust and panic, swirling around Sarah and Jake like a tempest of its own. As they plunged back into the chaos, the familiar creaks of the structure felt like ominous warnings. The fleeting idea of leaving the young man behind burned in her chest, feeding her resolve. "Where is he?" Sarah shouted, her voice strained against the roar over their heads. She forced herself to focus, remembering which way they had come. "Over there." Jake pointed, his eyes scanning the shadows while the ground trembled beneath them. "He near the hay bales." Desperation clawed at Sarah as she bounded around a pile of scattered wood. The light from a shattered window illuminated the devastation, but more importantly, there he was, crouched low, his hands pressed against his head. "Get up!" she screamed, fear propelling her forward. The beams above continued to splinter ominously, sending shards of wood spiraling through the chaotic air. The young man looked up, a wild look in his eyes. I can't. It's too heavy." "No, you have to," Sarah urged, feeling her own heart race as she reached him. "I can help." She knelt by his side, ready to lift the beam if needed. The stench of wet hay and fear mingled in the air, almost suffocating. "Sarah, we don't have time," Jake cried, his voice strained as he stood guard, ready to help at any moment. "Do you trust me?" she asked the young man desperately. He nodded, eyes wide with hope. Together, they started to shift the pile, but the wood didn't budge. Panic surged as the barn settled. They could hear the rush of the wind from the door behind them. Time was slipping away. "Come on." Jake joined them, wrenching at the debris. There was a moment where they all strained against the weight, muscles taut with effort. Maybe it was adrenaline, or perhaps divine intervention, but just when Sarah thought they might fail, the beam shifted slightly. "It's moving!" she gasped, a spark of hope igniting in the dim light. With renewed determination, they heaved together until the beam finally toppled free. The young man scrambled to his feet, his face stained with grime, part terror, part relief. "Now, run!" Jake shouted, and they bolted toward the door, the noise from outside louder than ever as the storm thrashed against the barn. "Go, man! We'll be right behind you," Sarah urged, feeling a surge of hope swelling within her. The young man stumbled forward, adrenaline blocking the pain. Jake positioned himself at the door, ready to shield them from any falling debris. "Keep going, Sarah." Sarah turned to follow the young man, but a sudden crash rumbled through the barn. She glanced back to see the beam collapsing in on itself, a whirlwind of dust and wood raining down. A surge of instinct drove her forward just as the wall beside Jake gave way, a cascade of splintered wood barreling toward him. "Jake!" she screamed, her voice breaking through the chaos. In 2 quick strides, she lunged, tackling Jake aside just as the debris crashed down in a deafening clamor. They tumbled together, hitting the ground hard, Sarah taking the brunt of the impact. A sharp pain shot through her shoulder, but she couldn't let it distract her. They had to get out. A moment of disorientation struck her as she pushed herself back to her feet. "Are you okay?" Jake looked shaken but determined, his eyes wide with concern. "I'm fine. But we have to go." They dashed toward the door, their breaths ragged and fear mingling with adrenaline. Together, they burst into the storm's embrace. Cold raindrops pelted their skin, but it felt like a baptism, a cleansing from the horrors inside. But as they regrouped outside, Sarah realized the young man was missing again. Her heart plummeted. "Where is he?" She scanned the darkness, and there he was, pushing himself out from behind a broken wall, fear etched onto his features. "I can't just leave, you guys were amazing, but I could have no time for that." Jake interrupted, grabbing the young man's arm and pulling him toward the house. "We have to move. Now." As they sprinted through the storm, the thunder roared. Around them a cacophony threatening to tear them apart, yet, amidst that chaos, another thought crept into Sarah's mind: what would be waiting for them in the safety of the house? Would they truly be safe, or was the storm only a prelude to the greater dangers lying ahead? The wind howled as they dashed across the yard, raindrops stinging their faces like tiny needles. The house loomed ahead, its silhouette blurred through the heavy sheets of rain. Sarah's heart raced, not just from the sprint but from the overwhelming weight of uncertainty. What awaited them at the front door? "Keep moving!" Jake shouted, glancing back at the barn, the structure still groaning under nature's fury. Sarah turned her head just in time to see a final plank tumble from the rooftop, crashing to the ground where they had just been. It made her stomach churn. They reached the house, and Jake yanked the door open with a force that nearly threw it off its hinges. Inside, the flickering light of a lantern cast shadows that danced upon the walls. The warmth was a stark contrast to the relentless chill of the storm. "Get in. Close the door." Jake barked as the young man followed them through the threshold. Sarah slammed the door behind them, exhaling sharply as she leaned against it, her heart still racing. The air felt different inside, thick with the scent of wood and something sweet that resembled lavender. She closed her eyes for a moment, trying to ground herself, but her mind was still chaotic. "What now?" the young man asked, his voice trembling as he looked from Sarah to Jake. Jake's brow was furrowed with determination. "We need to regroup, assess what's left." "Are you hurt?" Sarah asked the young man, her gaze steady. He shook his head, though his face was pallid. "Just shaken." "But are we safe?" "The storm, it's wild out there." "We're safe for now," Jake answered, though his voice held an undertone of uncertainty. They stood there for a moment, catching their breath. The storm raged outside, but inside, the ambience was oddly serene. It was a rare moment of safety that felt fragile, like a thin freeze over a deep pool of water. Sarah moved to the window, peering out into the darkness. Lightning flashed, momentarily illuminating the chaos of nature. They were unmoored in a world of fury, but they had made it through the barn, and that was something to hold on to. Do you think it'll get worse?" the young man asked hesitantly, watching Sarah anxiously. She turned to him, her heart softening. "We've come this far. We can handle whatever comes next." But deep inside, a familiar doubt surfaced. What if their troubles were only beginning? Jake moved to the table, where an old lantern flickered. "Let us catch our breath and then think about what to do next. We can't stay cooped up forever." As Sarah looked around the room, the silence began to stretch, letting their fears seep back in. She could feel the tumult inside her, the pressure building, anticipation crackling like electricity in the air. Outside, thunder rumbled once more, echoing like a heartbeat. The storm had become a living entity, an unseen force threatening to intrude upon their moment of respite. Suddenly, Jake's hand froze as he noticed something outside the window. "What is that?" he muttered. What do you see?" Sarah asked, her pulse quickening again. Jake moved closer to the glass, eyes narrowing. "It looks like someone's coming through the rain. They could be in trouble." Adrenaline surged once more, racing through Sarah's veins. Who would be braving the storm now? "Let us go," she said, already pulling the door handle, unwilling to let fear dictate the moment. Jake caught her arm, grounding her. "Hold on, wait for me." The urge to rush back out there was powerful. There were lives at stake, and she could feel that pull deep within her. But as they prepared to step back into the storm, Sarah wondered, what other challenges awaited them in this relentless night? The storm pelted the house, but Sarah's heart was now racing for a different reason. As she glanced at Jake, she could see the same determination reflected in his eyes. They both felt it, an urgency to help, to plunge back into the tumult. "Are you sure about this?" the young man said, his voice wavering. He was still pale, the adrenaline of their previous escape slowly fading. "We have to check," Jake said, pulling the door open against the tide of wind and rain. Sarah followed him out, her resolve hardening with each step onto the sodden ground. The world outside was a blur of shadows, the storm creating an eerie backdrop for their next move. "Stay close," Sarah instructed the young man, her voice steady, cutting through the noise. She could barely see a few feet in front of her, but she felt the pull of another presence just beyond the veil of rain. They moved cautiously toward the sound of muffled calls, faint yet persistent. Each step felt heavier, reminding her of what they barely survived. The darkness surrounded them, amplifying the storm's chaos. "Over here!" Jake shouted, his arm outstretched. Sarah squinted into the downpour, finally spotting a figure struggling against the wind, a woman clutching onto a broken branch as she staggered closer. "Help! Please!" she cried out, her voice breaking, somehow fighting through the storm's rage. Without hesitation, Sarah dashed toward her. The woman looked disheveled, soaked to the bone, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of hope, desperation, and fear all wrapped up into one. Sarah could feel the warmth of empathy flooding her heart. This stranger, too, was fighting the storm. "Grab my hand!" Sarah shouted, reaching out. The woman lunged forward, almost collapsing into Sarah's grasp. It was an instinctive act of survival, their fingers intertwining like lifelines amidst the raging tempest. Thank you," the woman gasped, her breath shaking with relief as they pulled her closer. Jake offered support from the other side, and together they half dragged, half led her back toward the house. Inside, the warmth hit them like a wave. As they crossed the threshold, Sarah noticed the woman trembling uncontrollably. She looked like she'd been through hell, and it broke Sarah's heart. "Let us get her dry," Jake said, moving swiftly to stoke the lantern's flame, illuminating their surroundings, while Sarah unbuttoned her own coat, draping it over the woman's shoulders. "Who are you?" Sarah asked gently, trying to coax the woman into calm. "Lila," she replied, teeth chattering. I got caught out when the storm hit. I thought I'd never find shelter. I was on my way to my uncle's when what happened. Jake pressed, glancing outside as the wind howled. He was still vigilant, with an earnestness that only deepened Sarah's appreciation for him. It doesn't matter, it's just all I could think of was getting out of the storm, Lila said, her voice wavering. I didn't think. Sarah put a hand gently on her arm. You're safe now. We're all in this together. As Lila's breathing began to slow, tension hung in the air, mingling with the scent of rain-soaked wood and hope. They were united by a shared experience, a bond forged in the fire of fear and survival, but as they settled into a temporary calm, the storm continued ragging outside, whispering secrets. Sarah sensed something deeper, an unsettling stillness beneath the surface of Lila's words. Jake turned to Sarah, his expression thoughtful. We need to figure this out. If she was on her way somewhere. Sarah nodded, the unease creeping back into her gut. But what if? Before she could finish her thought, a distant sound emerged like a low rumble of an approaching vehicle, darkening their already tumultuous night. What now? Lila asked, her voice now laced with alarm. Sarah's heart sank. They thought they were safe but felt the tension rise again. The world outside was unpredictable, complications waiting for them at every corner. But amidst the uncertainty, the most crucial question lingered: who else could be searching in this storm? They faced a choice. Confront the unknown or brace for what lay ahead in the dark, swirling tempest. As the rain continued to beat down, one promise hung in the air like a breath waiting to be released. What will we do now? Sarah said softly, the weight of their next decision pushing down on them like the storm itself. In the dawning light following the storm, an eerie silence blanketed the town, as if breath held too long was finally released. Sarah, Jake, and their unexpected companion Lila sat huddled inside the kitchen, the flickering lantern casting shadows across their weary faces. Outside, debris lay scattered like the remnants of a battle, yet amid the mess was an overwhelming sense of survival. I never thought we'd make it through, Lila said, her voice barely above a whisper. She wrapped Sarah's coat tighter around her shoulders, finding warmth in their shared experience. Neither did I, Sarah replied, glancing at Jake, who remained steadfast, his eyes scanning the dim light filtering in through the window. Each second felt heavy, the air thick with unspoken questions. What awaited them now? Jake finally turned to the two women, determination surging in his gaze. We survived the worst of it. But that doesn't mean the fallout isn't waiting for us. He glanced out at the aftermath of the storm. There may be more out there, needing help. Do you think they're still looking for anyone? Lila asked, anxiety flickering in her eyes. They have to be. This storm affected the whole town. Sarah's heart raced at the notion of going back into the chaos, but she knew they had to help. This wasn't just about them anymore. Jake swallowed hard. All right, then, he said, we'll go together. No one gets left behind. His words hung in the air, a sacred promise. We're stronger now. We'll face whatever comes next. They prepared themselves. The lingering fear of the storm's wrath intertwined with a growing courage that thrummed through their veins. They stepped outside, the morning sun peeking through the remnants of clouds, a golden promise after relentless rain. The world was transformed, as if painted anew. Trees sagged under tipsy branches and puddles mirrored the sky's awakening hues. With each step forward, the trio felt the bond of their near escapes fasten them together. They moved cautiously through the debris, every broken twig a reminder of a night that tested their resilience. As they walked through the town, they began to hear the sounds of others. Voices rose in a swell of urgency, calling for assistance mixed with spelling relief. Neighbors emerged, helping each other find what they had lost. Overwhelmed, Sarah squeezed Jake's hand, her heart swelling with gratitude as they rounded a corner. It was there, in front of what had once been the town's community center, the one place where hope resided amid uncertainty. We need to help, Sarah said, determination igniting the strength inside her. As they broke into groups, Sarah found herself alongside Lila, assisting an elderly couple whose roof had partially collapsed. "Thank you, thank you," the woman exclaimed, tears streaming down her face as the crew lifted debris away. "You saved us." Sarah's heart swelled at the profound impact a simple act of kindness could hold in catastrophic times. Further along, Jake led a team of men, guiding them in efforts to start clearing the biggest trees felled by the storm. He moved among them, laughter mingling with assurances, grounding everyone in shared camaraderie against the backdrop of devastation, and in that moment, it became clear, this storm had stripped away facades, bringing the community together in a way nothing else could have. They were reminded of their interconnectedness, the strength found in vulnerability, in reaching out to one another without fear of judgment. Hours turned into days, and as the sun set on the horizon, illuminating the sky in shades of soft orange and pink, Sarah stood with Jake at the diner, watching people come together, united by the aftermath of their shared experience. Lila stood beside them, a grin breaking through her earlier uncertainty. "How did we transform so much in just a few days?" she murmured to Sarah, somewhere between disbelief and gratitude. "Sometimes you need a storm to reveal how strong you are," Jake replied, squeezing Sarah's shoulder. Their eyes met, a silent understanding passing between them, a promise for what was yet to come. In that moment, everything felt possible. Hope shimmered in the air, vibrant and infectious. They had become the light in each other's lives, fueling dreams where only worry once thrived. Love sprang from the depths of chaos, building them anew, a bond to weather any storm. "Let us sing," Sarah suggested suddenly, her voice bright. "For all we've gone through." Laughter erupted around her, filling the space with joy, lifting every shadow of despair, and as they joined together, their voices blending into a choir of resilience, Jake stepped closer to Sarah, holding her hand tight. The world around them lit up with every note they sang, a powerful reminder that even amid life's fiercest storms, they could rise above, together. In the heart of Texas, a small town filled with newly reignited dreams thrived, lives boldly intertwined, uplifted by the beauty of newfound hope and love. This is where their journey moved forward, brightened by what they had found in each other: an incredible voice, an unwavering spirit. And now is your chance to be part of this journey. You need to subscribe now and join us for more extraordinary stories like this. Leave a like now to fuel the algorithm and support the community. It makes a huge difference in what we can share. Comment below your feelings about the transformation you just witnessed. And please, share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this same spark of hope and transformation. Don't wait not even one more second to share.